Alright, so I figured I'd make a quick video. I got this Nintendo Switch a long time ago, and it was horribly corroded damage. I had to peel off the little thing that they had covered the console in. Um, and I ended up cleaning. You can see where I've removed all the things a while back, and I went over and flux boiled all of the corrosion. I mean, it was everywhere. I mean, this whole thing was corroded. Um, so what would happen is when I would plug in the charging cable, it would uh, it would just draw 470 milliamps. I was like, you know what, this thing is one of those brain dead Nintendo Switches. But I decided I was taking a break from the PS5 that I was working on. I decided I would take it back out and give it another try. And so one of the things that I did is I was measuring the voltages on on my Max IC down here, and this is when second stage boot occurs, right? So when you power on the console, it it takes and the Max IC on the back side of the board generates voltages to the CPU, which then enable this Max IC, or maybe that Max IC enables this Max IC. I don't know exactly the process of events that take place, but I do know that when this is on, you should have zero point 0.6 volts. And so I had everything, man. It was the weirdest thing. I had everything except the zero point 0.6 volts here. And this chip, this was like one of the few chips that didn't have any corrosion on it. So, and I was getting my 1.1 volts on the backside of the Max IC. Uh, so yesterday I said, you know what, let me just swap out the battery charging IC that's on the back of the board. I think over here somewhere. Uh, and sure enough, when when I plugged it in, I could hear sound, right? But I wasn't getting any. It booted up, but I wasn't getting any image. And so let's cut on the microscope real quick here. And so what I noticed when I initially had started working on this thing was this ribbon cable for the backlight right here was uh, corrosion had got all into this connector and had eaten away the pad. So pin 3 or whatever that is right there was not making connection. So it was giving no backlight. So then I ground down the ribbon. This is all, I didn't record any of this just because I was just experimenting. But so I ended up grinding down that, soldering a jumper wire between that track on the ribbon cable and this point right here, right? And I still wasn't getting backlight. So I was like, well, the screen's just shot. So then I began to look at the I began to look at the actual traces that go in here, and you can see that this is damaged. Somehow it damaged it from the corrosion causing a short circuit and etc. So I ended up replacing that board with the board I have in here now. And so now we're making a good connection. So when I plug in the console, you can see I'm now, and it booted up fully yesterday because the battery had a little bit of charge in it. But if you notice, it's only drawing, um, it keeps cutting on, cutting off. It's not charging the battery at all. So I figured I'd make a video. That's where I'm at now. I've repaired, I've removed all the corrosion, put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, replaced the fuel gauge IC, which was preventing it from booting because it was corroded as well. Repaired the track going to the backlight. And so now I'm to a point to where it won't charge. So that is where we will pick up this video, now that you know everything that I've done to it. And I'm hoping it's just going to be a BQ replacement, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And hopefully that'll be the last problem I have with this console, and it'll work after that. So let's slide this out of the way. So if we look at the BQ IC under the microscope, and we turn on our multimeter, let's check around these caps. That seems to be good. That seems to be good. That's shorted. And that's shorted. So both sides of this are shorted. Oh my goodness, dude. No, it's not shorted. But if I plug in a battery, and so let's measure some voltage. Let's measure voltage around this, see if we can't work out how this thing's supposed to work. So I've got 3.1 volts there, and voltage is going down. That's kind of weird. On VSys, we got 3.8, and that's being produced from the battery, I presume. I got 3.7 here. What is the battery voltage? Let me battery voltage is 3.6 volts. So it may not, could it be the M92 rather than the BQ? Because like I said, it boots up on a battery that's charged. So let's unplug everything and let's check around the M92 here. No, I never did switch over to the friggin'. I'm the worst video maker of all time, bro. So that's shorted on that side. Obviously that's not shorted out, so it wouldn't boot at all. Yeah, see, I've checked these before, and I didn't find any shorts around those. I'll tell you, the ultrasonic cleaner did a good job. I mean, you can still see a little bit of the corrosion, like right down in where it was at in here. But in general, I would say that the ultrasonic cleaner did a very good job. It was corroded horribly around this chip, and I bumped these chips, you know. So yeah, and so I changed that chip. I pulled one off of another board. I reballed it, and I put that on yesterday, and that actually got me to a boot indication. But it's just the battery's not charging, you know? That's the thing. It's the battery that's not charging. But and the BQ is responsible for charging your battery. And I understand better how it works on the other Nintendo Switches. I'm not so keen on this on the lights, how this BQ is organized. All right, so let's talk about how I think, and I want you guys to pay attention to that. The way I think this thing works. I've never actually had a Nintendo Switch in which I needed to replace the BQ or even suspected the BQ being bad. So right now I have the battery plugged in. So I can measure the battery voltage right here on these two caps going into the BQ. So I know that I have battery voltage going into the BQ. If I measure on this inductor, this is VSys, right? This is what actually sends voltage to the rest of the board and causes the console to boot and all that kind of stuff. So I know I'm getting VSys, right? But when I plug in a USB connector, or when I plug in my charging connector, then it goes to the M92, right? And the M92 negotiates a voltage with the charger and says, okay, I'm willing to accept 15 volts and 1 amp of current, whatever the case may be, right? And that VSys, or as you were, that is now that is known as VBus. And VBus can be measured. It comes into this MOSFET here. It goes, and then the M92 sends a signal back to this MOSFET to the gate that says, hey, turn on, because there is voltage applied. And then we get voltage out of that MOSFET here on the source or drain or whichever one it is. So that VBus is felt on pins 1, that looks like, and then whatever this pin is. How many is that? 6 times 4, so pin 24. So pins 1 and 24 are our VBus. So for all intents and purposes now, I should be charging the battery, so I should see my battery voltage increase, and I don't. And I should see a stable voltage. I should see 4.2 volts on VSys, and I do not. So I'm still torn. So I guess the way my logic is that the BQ has to be bad, right? Because I got VBus coming in. I've got it all unplugged now, but I've got VBus coming in. I've got VBAC coming in. I'm feeling VSys, but the VSys I feel is not 4.2 volts. It's the battery voltage. So it's like the chip is getting the VBus, but then it's not doing anything with the VBus. It's not creating VSys. at 4.2 volts, nor is it charging the battery. So I think my BQ chip is defective. So we are going to remove it, and in the process, try not to remove every single component around it. What is the best way to grab this thing, dude? I don't know. I don't know. So let's put a little flux down, and we are going to attempt to remove this IC. I think I knocked something off. So looking at it, I don't see anything that looks horribly wrong with it. So let's go ahead and take a BQ chip. That's the new chip. So let's heat it up. All right, so I think it's on there. So we will wait for that to cool down. Let's plug in the battery. And let's see if we're still getting VSIS. We are. And we're still getting VBAT. So let's go ahead and plug in our ammeter and see if our voltage is increased at all. And no, well, yeah, a little bit. Is VBAT going up? No, we're still getting 15 volts. We're getting a little bit higher voltage though. Why don't I check the ammeter? I can't see the ammeter. No, it's not. It's doing the same thing it was doing. I think that port is maybe has issues as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we can try to reflow that battery IC again. All right, so I bumped it. I bumped the fuel gauge IC. So let's see if we get anything different now. All right, so yeah, we do definitely get something different. Is it going to drop back down? Like it's going to cut on? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let me put it in the chassis and see what I can see if I can figure this out. All right, battery is connected. Let's plug it in. See if I bumped it too far. So we're getting no current now. What in the world? I'm gonna have to take that fuel gauge IC off. So I think just to be safe, I'm gonna pull another one from another board. I don't know if any of these work, to be honest with you. The next thing is to put it our stencil like so. And then we're going to come set our hot air down to 350. And we're going to put a little flux down on the chip and we're going to heat it up again. Just to make sure we got some nice balls. Okay, I think that's good enough. You know what, that's good enough, man. I'm just going to mess it up if I keep going. Alright, I think that's the way it's supposed to be on there. So let's see if we can up this a bit. I messed that up again, but oh well. Alright, so I've redone the fuel gauge IC like 73 times. Just because I kept messing it up. And I finally figured out that there was really no point in me reballing it. If I held it over, if I made sure none of the solder balls were touching, then I held the chip in place and tacked it down, and then reflowed it with some flux. I think that was probably the easiest way to do that. But anyhow, let's plug it in and see what happens. All right, so it's still coming on. All right, we got through. Oh, it went off, so I think it's booting. That's a very different result than we have had. Oh, there we go. This horribly corroded thing is finally working. So in the end, I think the problem was I didn't have the fuel gauge IC on there properly. So now you know. You have video evidence that a fuel gauge IC will indeed one, cause your system not to boot and cause it to draw like 450 amps as soon as you plug it in. And two, it will prevent your battery from charging even if it seems to be working fine. Two things we learned. So all in all, there were only two faults with this console. Fuel gauge IC and the whatchamacallit, that the corrosion that ate away the cable. So I'm going to get this all put back together. I've got to find some parts because I don't know what I did with all the parts. And then we will go from there. It is all reassembled. As you can see, it plays games. All the buttons work. So, yeah, I took that screen protector off, man. And the screen's in really nice condition. I got all the sticky skin stuff off. So yeah, this thing turned out super duper nice. So this thing, like I said earlier in the video, it had two faults. It had the ribbon cable was damaged coming for the backlight, and that fuel gauge IC was definitely defective. I'm not 100% sure that, because I took one from another console and put it on here. I reballed it and put it on, and the battery wouldn't charge. And so when I bumped it, the current was all jacked up. So I think I bumped it too far. So then when I finally reballed another one from another console, I had to try it a couple of times to get it right. I kept it kept sliding around because it's such a small chip. But yeah, in the end, I think either I just didn't have the fuel gauge IC on there right the first time, or uh, that one was defective as well. I mean, I don't think that's probably the case, but uh, I'm not sure exactly. All I know is that it was related to the fuel gauge IC because apparently that thing communicates with the BQ, and if it doesn't detect a battery in some way, and I think it also communicates with the CPU. So if that communication is disrupted in some way, it'll one prevent your console from booting, and two, it will prevent it from charging in specific instances, like the instance we saw. So yeah, but all in all, I'm glad I revisited this because it's a working, very nice console now. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Y'all be good.